The Trump administration spent 4 years enacting hardline immigration policies.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
They included building another border wall, restricting the U.S. asylum system, and threatening to end deferred action for childhood arrivals, which is known as DACA. 2 years into the Biden administration, immigration advocates say that the rhetoric has changed from the Trump years, but the reality of what's actually going on in the border, well, that's largely stayed the same. Blaine Bookey is a legal director at the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies. She says Trump policies like Title 42 have radically changed the political discourse around asylum. Title 42 is a public health order that allows border officials to turn back asylum seekers without a court hearing.
They have completely flipped our understanding of asylum. They have made it seem like access to asylum at our border is an aberration, when actually it's these policies, these new policies only from the last few years, that are the aberration. For 40 years before that, people were able to come to the border and seek asylum.
While activists continue to decry Biden's approach to Title 42 and other immigration policies, conservatives slam him for being too soft on border security. Advocates say that it isn't just asylum policies that have carried over from the Trump years. DACA is still under threat, and the border wall continues to be expanded. Aaron Reichlin-Melnick is the policy director for the American Immigration Council. He is among many who are frustrated with the fact that DACA is still frozen in place. The Obama-era program provides protections to undocumented immigrants who came here as minors.
No new DACA applications have been processed since 2018, when the Trump administration sought to end the program. That means it's been over 4 years since anyone has been able to apply for the program.
Despite the Democrat control of the White House and Congress, nothing has changed when it comes to DACA.
As of today, Dreamers and other undocumented youth have just as much insecurity in their lives as they did at the beginning of the year.
Pedro Rios is the director of the U.S.-Mexico border program at the American Friends Service Committee. He says that advocates here remain frustrated over what they consider broken campaign promises. A particular sore spot for Rios is that the Border Patrol continues to block access to Friendship Park, which is located along the border just south of Imperial Beach. This is one of the only places along the Mexico border where people from either side can spend time together.
In terms of what's taking place on the ground, we still don't have access to the area that is known as the enforcement zone. This is the area between the primary and the secondary border barriers. And again, the rationale for not having access doesn't necessarily make sense.
On the Mexican side of the border, people who work with migrants also say that not much has changed in the last year. They point out racial inequities in border enforcement. Title 42 gives border officials the discretion to grant exemptions on a case-by-case basis, but Ukrainian refugees and other white European migrants have had easier access to those exemptions than black and brown migrants from Latin America. So says Erika Pineiro, the executive director of Al Otro Lado, the LA-based legal rights organization that's helped hundreds of migrants in Mexico.
I think by and large, it's Black and Indigenous migrants who are left out, people who aren't tech savvy, people who aren't literate, people who just aren't connected to services anyway. So I don't think that it's going to be it's not a fair process now, and I don't see the administration making plans to make it a fair process even after the end of Title 42.
However, while advocates are not optimistic that 2023 will be much different than 2022, they see some rays of hope. They point to a recent poll showing that the majority of Democrats and Republicans support offering asylum to people fleeing their homes. Again, here's Bookey from the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies.
Americans see through that. I think the example of the Ukrainians, which we mentioned earlier, just helped to highlight for Americans that what is the purpose of the U.S. asylum system, and why do people need to come to our border sometimes in order to access that protection.
She says public opinion polling around DACA shows a similar dynamic. She believes it's possible that the policy might catch up to public opinion. Regardless, we're likely in for another eventful year at the border. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.